Hello, and welcome to the From Toxic to Healthy, Healthy Relationships Masterclass Series. I'm your host, Jen Youngquist. Today I'm speaking with Gabriella Taylor. She is a relationship specialist and the founder of Extraordinary Love Transformational Educational Programs. Welcome, Gabriella, and thank you
Hi.
for being part of this important conversation.
You are so welcome. It's one of my favorite topics.
Well, let's get started off by telling us a little bit more about you, who you are, and what you do.
I identify as a relationship specialist and as a minister in terms of my professional cap, but really I am a being here, like many of us, who has always been a seeker, a seeker of knowing that while on some level this world has taught me and many of us to try and be something that I'm not, try push away my feelings, deny, what's real or genuine for me. I've always known that there's something more, that there's something holy and deep inside of me, inside of each one of us that I want to get to know more. So I serve within the transformational industry. I have been since 1994. I mean, my life is about transforming consciousness and has been for more of my life than not, but really I'm a seeker. There's a part I want to know. I want to know on the deepest level what we're made of as humans. So, and again, when I put on the professional hat, I have the honor and privilege of walking, holding the hand of many courageous men and women as they're walking along their path of exploration and awakening in their own lives.
Yes, so many of people like you are needed in this world, especially in these times. So I want to talk a little bit about how you came by your signature program. So you created that essentially through healing yourself.
Yeah.
Would you want to tell us a little bit about that story? Because I think a lot of people could probably identify with where you were in those times.
Sure. Yeah. So my signature program is called Foundations of Extraordinary Love. And really it's a short term, it's a program that's designed to transform our relationship paradigm. And what that means is for many of us, the relationship model that we were shown growing up, was filled with misunderstandings, was filled with confusion, with a lot of hurt feelings. And we never really learned how to relate with ourselves or others in ways that brought out our best. And so for a lot of us, we're walking around in these paradigms where we're frustrated, our needs aren't met, we are dealing with betrayal or loss or heartbreak or, whatever it might be, or maybe we've been signaled for a really long time. And so my program is designed to basically, take you where you are if you're in an experience of just feeling really dissatisfied in your current relationship experience, and to walk you over the bridge. I've discovered that there is a predictable developmental process that we walk through to really grow up and show up for healthy, loving relationships. And the reason why it's so dear to my heart is back in 2005, I was just at such a low point in my own journey, having had a history of abuse, having grown up in an alcoholic home, having endured a tremendous amount of sexual abuse. I was lost. I had, my early experiences, my early relationship model did not teach me how to honor myself. It did not teach me how to respect myself. It did not teach me how to have a voice. I didn't even know who I was. And so through having experienced a lot of agony and heartbreak and panic attacks and a lot of low self-esteem and just all of these things, it led me to asking the bigger questions of life. I knew deep in my heart that more was possible. I knew that more was available to me. I just didn't know how to get there. And so fast forward to 2005, like I was saying, I had already been in the transformational industry for over a decade at that point. I was, working with my clients, having amazing results in their lives. Yet for me, if you looked at my relationship life behind closed doors, I was a hot mess. I did not know how to translate what I was so skillful at walking other people through to myself. So I devoted myself for a year to creating what I called my laboratory of love, where at this point I had my master's degree in psychology. I had been, like I said, but I'd been in this industry for quite some time. So I became my own best test subject, if you will. I started researching my own experience and almost created this objectified I had felt such a subjective amount of pain for so long that I was able to create this discernment and start looking at myself and my reactions and my thoughts and my assumptions with men. I was able to look at them in a more objective way so I could assess like what the pattern was that I was playing out, because I knew well enough that I had a certain story about men and myself and my lovability that was limiting. It did not support me. It came from my past, yet I didn't really know how to transform it. So in that year, I devoted myself. Like I would go out on dates, and I would run the data from the dates on how disconnected I was on the date, how, if I was honest or dishonest, if I spoke up for myself or not, if I even went out with someone that I actually didn't want to be with or not. And through this year, what emerged for me was a very clear, kind of download as to how to reconstruct my own vantage point, my own lens that I was looking at relationships through, my perceptual filter. So I was actually able to start creating some new experiences for myself by shifting my beliefs, doing a deeper level of learning how to work with myself emotionally, how to regulate myself when I got upset. I started shining the light and growing awareness on blind spots that I had, where I didn't even realize how much I was reinforcing what I didn't want. And then I was like blaming others or blaming myself for it. So it was a hugely illuminating time. I met my Nicholas about probably a year after that. And I really knew that I was onto something. So then I spent 2 years and over 1,000 hours of research interviews with other amazing, conscious single women that were struggling in relationship. I spent all of these times in interviews, collecting what the common denominators were. So from that, of where women struggled and what they wanted most, and what their approach was. And so from that, I was able to extrapolate a very clear pattern and a very clear roadmap and bridge into what actually does work to shift our entire orientation to ourselves and to relationships. So I've lived it, it's worked for me. And at this point, I've walked hundreds of other women through it. So that's a little bit of what got me here.
So you basically took yourself on your journey.
100%. Yeah. I mean,
a lot of times we're not conscious about it. We just kind of go through the motions, and we have a result, and then we might try something else, but we're not like conscious as we walk through each of those steps. And that's
absolutely. Yeah. And there's something about our ability, those of us that are courageous and willing to look. It's not about finding fault with ourselves, because we know the Lord, the world has enough messages that tell us that something's wrong with us, but it's looking in a way of assuming personal responsibility of like, I want to respond. I want to grow my ability to respond and be responsible for the results that I'm having in my life. So I want to look at what I'm doing that might not be working, so I can adjust it, so I can have more of what I want. And there's so much goodness that's available for us here.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the fears that might keep someone from going on that journey. Like maybe they've had a repeat of the same kinds of relationships over and over, and maybe they feel like there's something really wrong with them, and they're kind of afraid to look at that and examine that, or they might be a little bit older and think that it's too late. Can you talk about like the fears, why we sometimes have those, and how limiting it can really be?
Yeah. We can all relate to fears. It's ways that, for most of us, for a good percentage of us, when we were younger, there were certain needs that we had that likely were not met by the grown-ups that were entrusted with our care. And I'm talking as an infant, as a small child, as a budding adolescent. Very often we experienced from well-intended, but not really well-equipped parental figures, we experienced ways of being shamed or being shut down or having our hearts broken if we witnessed if our parents were together, or we were with our parents, divorce or betrayal or affairs or hidden secrets. And so for a lot of us, we enter into this conversation of relationship as an adolescent, young adult, already carrying a lot of concerns woven around our hearts that we're not even aware of. And they're these adaptive strategies that we've learned to use to protect ourselves. And so fears largely, they're often they're often a result of either things that happened in our past that we didn't fully process and assimilate, so that way we could integrate them and they don't really have power over us anymore. Or there's something in us that hasn't really developed a strong enough sense of self that knows, that trusts that, okay, even if I open and I fall in love and that person leaves me, I don't have to leave me. So there's fears, in my experience, they're either, as I was saying, they're either from unresolved things from our past that haven't really been dealt with effectively or processed effectively or integrated, or there's parts of ourselves where we don't know that we haven't developed the character strengths or the inner musculature to not lose ourselves or leave ourselves in our pain. And then, especially when it comes to the idea of opening our heart to another, oh my gosh, that can feel so risky. And if we don't know what our words are for what we need or want, it can be so fear. It's so scary for many.
So to someone that is in a relationship right now where they're not super happy, or, it might even be a bit toxic or unhealthy, and they're waiting for their partner to change, would you consider that a fear?
It's more layered than that. It's more layered. When I witness that, or when I see that, one of the core principles that my work revolves around is that all relationships are a sacred mirror. They are a sacred mirror. They are mirroring something up to us about ourselves that we have yet to learn and grow through or into. And it's not necessarily a one-to-one mirror. So if I'm, in a relationship with someone that's abusing me, it may not be that the mirror is that I am abusing myself. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Maybe it's the mirror of, if I'm tolerating or allowing abusive treatment, what is that mirroring to me about my perception of myself that thinks that I deserve that, or thinks that there's nothing else, or thinks that that's the best that I could do, or that minimizes it. So it's intricate, but very often, I'm a big proponent of how freedom truly comes by recognizing that our inner experience, our inner world, the way that we think about ourselves, the way that we feel about ourselves, the way that we regard ourselves, that is molded, by our belief system, will always be reflected back to us based on our outer circumstances, the outer dynamics we call in, the outer events that seem to constellate around our world. There's always something that's being reflected back to us about ourselves, and where we have an opportunity to let go of any patterns of self-denial or self-doubt or self-criticism, and to step into really honoring who we are. And it's a journey, it's a process.
Yeah, and I think it's a difficult one for a lot of people to begin. I can speak from experience there. I did have a pattern of calling in, men that were emotionally unavailable. And I had a lot of friends tell me, well, maybe you should, see a therapist, or, work on your own issues. And I was always like, no, that's crap. That's not how it works, and I did not want to believe it. I didn't want to examine that. And I think on some level, I probably thought, because I'm a bit of a do-it-yourselfer, so I thought that was weak if I admitted that there was an issue, or that it was weak if I sought outside help.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to the past me?
Yeah.
That was in that mode.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone in that. We exist in a world where the culture prizes those that are sort of the solo, where we are largely prized to suck it up and figure it out ourselves. We've been largely shamed or told that we're weak, or that there's something wrong with us if we need support, if we need help. So for one, I think that that's just another flavor of the level of how we've been conditioned to deny ourselves our own needs, to deny ourselves just the basic right and recognition that we as humans, we need one another. Like, we are a tribal species. Like, our system could not survive without, we are herd animals. And so just by virtue of the belief or misunderstanding that we can actually exist on our own, to me, that harkens back to a really outdated belief system. And then from there, we can see where there's, when we're in that belief, there's this armoring, there's this anticipation that I can figure it out, or there's this protection. And my sense is that's open. And I imagine you've probably encountered this on your journey. Underneath that, this idea that I've got to hunker down and figure it out on my own. Like, when we actually open it, we see that there might be some shame in here, or there might be some insecurity in here. There might be some vulnerability in here. And in my experience, this is the stuff that we cannot do on our own. And it's ironic, right? How many of us want to we want to do it alone, but we are talking about relationship, which inherently assumes another person. And so my number one encouragement for anyone that might be struggling is to get support. And I don't mean support from a family member or a friend, because that is not that is not the support that will assist in seeing what's true outside of a social dynamic. So the support of a trusted therapist or a coach, or someone that's really educated about relational intimacy, read a book, join a program, whatever it is. There's so many resources available. But yeah, we cannot do it on our own. And that is one of the number one myths that we have to overcome in our own journey to extraordinary love.
Yeah, that was a huge barrier for me. And I really wish, because this was a few years ago, it was probably about 10 years ago, internet was kind of just getting started. Coaches were, kind of just starting to come around. I had no idea what a coach was. So to me, when people were telling me to see a therapist, there was a lot of shame in that for me. Whereas I think that if I had known about some other methods, or other people that I could go and see, I think that probably would have gone a long way to helping me get to where I was going a lot faster.
Yeah. It's like we can't see what we can't see. And I think in the 12 steps, there's a saying where they say something like, it's our best thinking that got us here. It's like, it's our best thinking that gets us in lousy relationships, because we just can't see what we can't see. And there's so much support available when we are willing to open, when we are willing to have a new experience. Without that willingness, there's no amount of help that could actually support.
Yeah. And honestly, had I seen someone or had worked with someone directly, it would have happened a lot faster.
Yeah.
This was actually an arc of almost 20 years.
Yeah. Well, and there's something I think about honoring whatever our journey has been to get us to where we are. So I can even appreciate that in those periods of feeling that you had to be stoic. My sense is you probably learned a lot as a facilitator yourself as to how to identify with what it feels like when we are in these stories that keep us stuck or alone or isolated. So it's kind of like mining our experience for everything that's good in it, that we can transform in it to use.
Yes. Yeah, I think we all have a journey that we can learn from and help others with. And that's part of what I'm trying to do. That's part of what you're trying to do. And that's a great thing.
Yeah. And, I would say that something that I found over the years is that there's a unique phenomenon with conscious, self-aware women that are highly educated. They've been doing a tremendous amount of personal development work, that are spiritually aware. And studies even show that conscious women have a harder time than most in relationships. And, people often wonder, like, why is that? And it's not, on one hand, it's because when I think of conscious, what it means is we're shining the light. Like, to be conscious of means that we have awareness of. If we're unconscious, we can't see it. We don't have any awareness of it. So it's simply, to me, conscious is another word of just being aware of myself, aware of other, aware of how I'm interacting, in my life, aware of how others' interactions with me are affecting me. So it's just simply being aware. And conscious women, what we find, and statistically what shows is, while they have a tremendous amount of awareness for a lot of women, there's a tremendous amount of awareness. There's a clear sense of like knowing, who I am on the deepest level, like having a clear sense of like, I am, this beautiful being of light. Yet if we haven't psychologically integrated our behaviors, there's a gap. So we might walk around with a sense of knowing who we are on the deepest level, but the way that we show up in the world, the way that we show up in men, the way that we talk about ourselves, the things that we'll agree to tolerate or settle for, or the things that we'll enact, or the ways that we behave, there's all of these ways that you can see in my hands here, where it's like we might know who we are in one level, but we're behaving in ways that we're not even aware of, that is the opposite from what we know to be true. And conscious women, what I found is their awareness often exceeds where they're psychologically integrated. So because we can be aware and psychologically unintegrated at the same time. So what my work does, and does, quite well based on just what I witness, what happens with women, it's like they really learn how to be aligned in themselves and stand up in themselves in much more of a greater sense of integrity, of representing who they know themselves to be, speaking of themselves in ways that regard who they know themselves to be at the deepest level. So it really is this process of psychologically, lining ourselves up, behaviorally lining ourselves up, emotionally lining ourselves up with our expanded awareness.
Yeah, I identify with that quite a bit.
Yeah. And so many women shame themselves. They're like, what's the matter with me? I have all of this awareness. Why am I still chasing after this guy that won't even respond to his calls? I know better. But then even that promotes this further divisiveness, because we turn on ourselves and think that something's wrong with us.
Yeah. So are there specific ways, or like basically what's your special sauce in helping people to integrate that and to become more, in line with what they want?
Yeah, I'd say at the heart of all of this is learning how to turn towards ourselves, how to turn towards our own experience, even if our own experience is one where I feel riddled by insecurity or frustration or anger or hopelessness, but this willingness to turn towards ourselves and become an advocate for ourselves. Because the mind, the ego, is designed to view self-improvement as this endless, it can be this endless project of like self-improvement, and where there's no end. And because the assumption in that is that there's something wrong with me that I need to fix or change. And to me, and one of my beautiful teachers and mentors and friends, Dr. Robert Holden, has a beautiful saying where it says, no amount of self-improvement can make up for any lack of self-acceptance. No amount of self-improvement can make up for any lack of self-acceptance. And so for a lot of us, we're running around with these ideas thinking, oh, I need to heal this, or I need to fix this, or I need to change this, or I need to resolve this. But it's coming from a place that thinks that we're not okay. And to me, at the heart of all of this is learning how to turn towards ourselves and regard ourselves with mercy, with tenderness, even if we're messing up or we did something we don't feel good about, especially then. For the ways that we may feel impatient or urgent or think that, time is running out, there's this, it's our relationship with ourselves. So many of us walk around with an unhealthy relationship with ourselves. And at the heart of the matter, we want to create a loving, kind, gentle, patient relationship with ourselves. So ourself knows that we got ourselves, that we can back ourselves up, that we can trust ourselves. And I'm saying plural because we all have different aspects of ourselves. So we're all walking around with these different faces that we show to the world or that we see behind closed doors. And so this piece of like turning towards ourselves and honoring ourselves, no matter how we feel, what's happening in our world, and being a safe, gentle, loving advocate for ourselves is part of the, it's the secret sauce.
Yeah, to me, that's the heart of resiliency, basically, to know that you have your own back.
Yeah.
And so many people don't.
Yeah. And again, and it's none of our fault, right? Like we exist in a world that has largely been constructed on these outdated belief systems that has taught us to turn against ourselves, look for approval from others, to, be a solo sojourner, figure it out on our own, no pain, no gain, and to just like suck it up and get over it. So there's been a lot of messaging in the world that we've all grown up in, our parents grew up in, our grandparents grew up in, whatever our culture was, that had these insidious messages that taught us that who we were somehow isn't okay. And we're shifting that right now. I mean, we are transforming the very culture and attitude of this planet the more that we come together in conversations like this and create a new world that's born on compassion and kindness and respect and caring. And it's happening now. So our kids and our grandkids don't have to suffer in the same ways. How amazing.
Yes. That's beautiful. That is the special sauce. So do you work with single women, or do you work with women that are in relationship as well?
It's both. So in my private practice, I work single, married couples. It's really any person that has a willing heart that's willing to, transform and grow. And my programs I have different programs designed either for Foundations of Extraordinary Love is largely designed to just to redefine and reconstruct a new healthy relationship model. So it's applicable to if you're single, it's applicable if you're in a relationship but you're just not happy. So it really depends. I have a great love of this work. And what I find is relationship is the vehicle. Because what we're really talking about is creating a more connected, loving relationship with ourselves. And relationship is the vehicle that we use to see ourselves through, to see like, am I regarding myself with kindness as I'm relating with men? For a lot of us, no, we don't. And so that's where we use our, what comes up in our relationship with men as a way to actually teach us about how to be more honoring of ourselves. And from there, the byproduct is an amazing, extraordinary, loving relationship. I mean, it's pretty cool.
So I have, just as you were saying that, a thought kind of came to me that if you have someone that is in a relationship, they're not super happy, it's not doing, it's not for their greatest good at that point in time. But say the woman wants to make changes and to start to honor herself and to do that work. Have you worked with couples where the man's not interested in making those same kinds of changes? And if so, what have you seen as the outcome? Because what I'm wondering is there someone that's sitting there is like, yeah, I'd like to make these changes, but that's going to threaten my husband and my relationship, and I'm afraid to make that journey?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And it might, right? Like it is a gamble, because really what we're talking about is, the more that I as a woman am able to nurture, I call it my vision of love. It's like the vision of love, this loving relationship in terms of how I experience myself, what the shared experiences together, how I'm regarded and cared for. And so the more that we give ourselves permission to really stand for our vision of love being made manifest, we don't know if our existing relationship, if it doesn't match that, will naturally evolve into that just by virtue of the magical alchemy that happens, in life, or if we'll outgrow it. And so I can really appreciate from the vantage point of being in an experience that's not really satisfying, it can seem pretty scary. What I have found is it's not about, to me, we don't want to focus on will he change or grow with me? It's more, I am holding for my experience of my vision of love, and we will see. So because with that, it'll be this or something better. Either that relationship will improve and it'll be extraordinary, or that will gracefully, it may move away and something better will come in. And so that's where there is this trust piece. I consider my work, I call it's a psycho-spiritual journey. So we do our ego work, we clear up some of our psychological, wiring, and it's a spiritual journey, because it's like, I'm going to take a stand and risk love, and I'm going to show up for love. And that's where God, grace, whatever we call it, the miraculous can come in and meet us at the point of our devotion and intention.
Yeah, and that's probably what that woman sitting there thinking, should I do this or not, doesn't see at this moment, is that if it gets to that point, it will actually be okay.
Yeah, it'll be better than okay. Better than okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Gabriella, for gracing us with your presence and wisdom today.
Oh,
Would
my
you,
pleasure.
would you like to tell everybody where they can find you, what you have coming up, and maybe a little bit
Yeah.
about your freebie?
Yeah, you can find me at gabriellataylor.com. So just head over there and you'll find me there. I'm facilitating a complimentary program right now. It's called Stay in the Light, and it's 21 practices that really support us in emotional well-being, that support us in creating a clear mental positive outlook, in nurturing our spiritual relationship and our spiritual practice. So you can find me on gabriellataylor.com for more information about that. And my Foundations of Extraordinary Love program the next round will be coming up in the summer. So stay tuned if you join me in any way, and you'll hear more about that. But gabriellataylor.com, you can find me there.
Perfect. And you can grab Gabriella's freebie down below. It is a checklist of 10 easy ways to open your heart, let go of the past, increase your love vibration, and let love in starting now.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you, Gabriella, once again for joining us. And I hope that we get to talk to you at some point in the future.
Likewise. Thank you for doing this beautiful work, Jen. It's really gorgeous.
My pleasure. Thank you.